Rise of the Tyrant. For many long years the Pact of Bones held. Blugo Spine-Crusher led the Tarkan war-glut along the hunting trails time and again, but he forbid them from devouring the skeletons of their victims. Yet the old tyrant's rule was threatened from within, by those who scorned his appeasement of Nagash's legions. With the signing of the Pact of Bones, war between the Ossiarch Bone Reapers and the ogres of the Tarkan war-glut was avoided, at least temporarily. Throckmorton returned to his master's side, and Blugo Spine-Crusher led his hunting parties away from the endless boneyards, and into lands stricken by war, where meat and riches were both plentiful. The Tarkan thrived and grew fat upon the constant cycle of conflict that dominated the lands of Holost. Always searching for their next meal, they journeyed along winding routes through the desert and across hazardous mountain valleys, falling upon anything unfortunate enough to stand in their path. The ogres filled their bellies with flesh, and the saddlebags of their Rhinox mounts with plunder. Soon Spine-Crusher's war-plate could barely conceal his prodigious girth, and the Tarkan subsumed several lesser war-gluts, after messily consuming any naysayers, of course. Throughout the Tarkan's golden age, Spine-Crusher held to his word, and never once feasted upon the bones of his victims. Food was plentiful in those days of constant battle, and so his warriors were, for the most part, happy to adhere to the Pact of Bones. Anyone who openly muttered their dissatisfaction had their brains splattered by a swing of Spine-Crusher's great thunder mace, and this proved sufficient discouragement. Indeed, as they passed back and forth through the baking deserts of the endless boneyard on their great raids, ogres deposited the picked-clean trophies they had gathered on their travels in great piles. This was done with something approaching reverence, for old Spine-Crusher had come to see Nagash as an agent of almighty Gorkamorka, the great beast that consumes the realms. After all, what was Shaish Nadar, if not a vast maw devouring all put before it? Years passed into decades under the command of Catacross the Undefeated. The Ossiarch Bones Reapers advanced far across the lands of Holost, driving their mortal foes into panic retreat. On the open plains and the valleys of the land of dead heroes, their grand formations of spear-wielding Mortek warriors and devastating Cavalos Death Riders seemed all but invincible. Even the Stormcast Eternals were routed in decisive battles at Mons Ferris and on the banks of the Daxamatic River. More and more of Hellas was claimed in the name of Nagash. Kin against kin. No glorious reign lasts forever, especially in brutal and violent society of the Gutbuster ogres, and the once undisputed rule of Blugo Spine-Crusher was beginning to show signs of splintering. The tyrant's unconventional ideology was becoming increasingly unpopular among the younger, brasher ogres of the war-glut, who were offended by the very notion of leaving anything uneaten. They looked upon the piles of skulls and rib cages left in tribute to the Ossiarch Bone Reapers and saw only weakness and wasted food. The leaders of this discontent was none other than Bulgo's own offspring, the ambitious Kagruk Kin-Eater, who had returned after several decades spent upon the battlefields of the northern Hellost. Kagruk had made his name as a fearsome mercenary, renting his services, and those of the troop of ogres for hire known as the Belly Boys, out to Chaos Lords, Free Guild Generals, and Auric Megabosses alike. Now that he returned to the Magathar Mountains, fat and rich, he had no intention of bowing to anyone, not less his own flesh and blood. Family loyalties mean little in Gutbuster society, and even amongst their own kind, Cagruk was regarded as particularly ruthless. A pot-belly youth, he had bludgeoned to death and subsequently consumed all 5 of his brothers, an act that granted him the given name Kin-Eater, and amused approval of his father. Cagruk's pride and appetite were equally gargantuan, and he resented bowing to the will of any other creature, especially some gutless stack of bones, as he put it. He grumbled to his followers over the hiss and bumble of the war camp's meat cauldrons, asking why mighty Tarkan Warglut was baring its belly to some skeletal lord whose armies were mired in battle far to the north. Ogres did not pick and choose what they ate according to the wills of their enemy, Cagruk insisted. Ogres ate it all, and if anyone tried to stop them they would find themselves in a cooking pot. A younger, more vital Blugo spine-crusher might have caught the scent of rebellion in the air. As it was, the first the old tyrant knew of his son's ambition was when Cagruk marched boldly up to the Maw throne. The Kin-Eater removed his gut plate, casting it down at Spine-crusher's feet. Silence fell across the tyrant's long house. A challenge has been issued for control of the Tarkan Warglut, and Bugol Spine-crusher was forced to answer. The brawl that followed would enter the annals of the Tarkan as one of the bloodiest in their history. Casting aside his own golden belly armor, Blugo Spine-crusher leaped from his throne and fell upon the challenger, moving with surprising swiftness for one with such tremendous girth. This would be a fight to the death, and the winner would spill his defeated enemy's intestines across the floor of the throne room. Bulgo's thunder mace clashed against his son's beast-skewer glaive, and the audience of watching ogres roared and gawked in delighted appreciation. Spine-crusher fought hard, but against the power and vitality of his son, he was sorely outmatched. A vicious headbutt from Cagruk dropped Spine-crusher to the floor. With a vicious howl the young warrior fell upon his stricken father and tore open the old tyrant's prodigious gut with his own teeth, wiping away the last gory remnants of his deposed kin from his chin. Cagruk took up Spine-crusher's thunder mace and lashed the dead ogre's gilded gut-plate around his own belly. Thus began the reign of Tyrant Cagruk Kin-Eater. His first command was that the Tarkan Warglut embark on a great raid, passing through the endless boneyard and consuming everything they laid their eyes upon, including the bones. This order was received with a mighty cheer from the gathered ogres. Betrayal. The Osiark bone reavers of Kartoch were caught entirely unawares by Kin-Eater's sudden betrayal. Before an armed response could be mustered, many sources of fine bone had already been devoured. The barrow tombs of Calith were ransacked, the precious mummified bodies of its desert princes consumed, and their treasures sundered or stolen. Great portions of the valley known as Titan's Grave were smashed to ruins, the mighty remnants of ancient colossi cracked open, and the marrows drained. The only bones left were rotten, blackened things, unsuitable for crafting of even the lowliest skeletal serfs. The lords of the Osiark bone reapers simply could not comprehend the logic of Tarkan's actions. There were no shortage of food to be found in the war-torn lands of Halust. So why would their former allies risk obliteration by breaking the Pact of Bones? Though Nagash had imbued his elite legions with a flicker of autonomy, they lacked the capacity to understand the primal selfish desires that drove their enemies. Fogmortian, master of the Bone Tithe, was dispatched to Kartoch by the great necromancer to pass judgment over the treacherous Tarkan. The emissary of Nagashazar was enraged by the ogre's reckless, and illogical actions, but he had long since ceased to be surprised by the duplicity and self-destructive delusions of mortals. The master of the bone tithe could feel the icy fury of his master's rage coursing through his body, but did not let his anger dictate his actions. He shared his master's patient, calculating nature. First he would discern the reason that the wanton greed of the Tarkan war-glut had been unleashed after so many years of peace. Then the Tarkan would pay dearly for their insult. Perhaps once the deficit of stolen bones had been recovered, stripped from the corpses of the treacherous ogres, he would allow one or two of the creatures to survive. They would flee the endless boneyard and carry word of the punishment that awaited those who defied the Osiark bone reapers across the mortal realms. Word soon reached Karuk Kin-Eater that the undead legions were emerging from the deathly sandstorms of the endless boneyard. Marching to the border of Tarkan's territory, the tyrant looked upon the armies of death that Bungalow Spine-Crusher had feared, and he was not impressed. Summoning his bully boys, the tyrant made ready for war. He planned to parley with these fleshless intruders, to draw them in close enough so that he could smash them to pieces and feast upon their bones. Idly, Tyrant Kin-Eater wondered what the polished armor of the Osiark bone reapers would taste like, and his belly rumbled in anticipation.